Hi, and welcome to Tech Takeaways, the podcast taking technology's largest technology challenges and dicing them down into little bite-sized chunks just for you to enjoy. So I'm your host, Jason Fitzgerald, and I'm joined as ever by my dynamic co-host, Paul Stringfellow.
Hey, Jace, I'm ready to get into some tasty, tiny chunks of tech.
Awesome. I am as well, actually. And this episode is all around cloud storage. So
crowd storage is a different
crowd
thing.
storage. Yeah. Don't give your data to a crowd. That is the wrong thing to do. Put it in the cloud instead.
But don't put all your people in a small container.
Yeah. So the episode is around cloud storage, and there's a whole plethora of different types of cloud storage, and I think that we wanted to just kind of pick up on cloud storage. Where it's used, where it should be used, where maybe it shouldn't be used. So, do you want to set the scene for this episode?
I shall set the scene. And I'm going to pinch your scene setter because I thought it was a really good point.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about doing this episode, one of the things you mentioned was not all cloud storage is SharePoint and OneDrive.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. Or Google Docs for our Google chums.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely true. You know, I think we see lots of conversation around cloud storage being, I'll put stuff in SharePoint and OneDrive, but cloud storage is more than that. And potentially cloud storage has a whole bunch of different potential use cases that often people haven't thought about or haven't considered as a way of delivering their long-term kind of data storage strategy. So, you know, I think while there's lots of different ways of delivering cloud storage, fundamentally most cloud storage is the same. So if you look at things like SharePoint and OneDrive are software as a service. They're not really cloud storage. They're actually a service. They're a place for you to
put your Office files.
And actually, that's a good point because not all data
is Office files
because it's not all Excel and Word and PowerPoint. No, it's where do you put your big database, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose that's where this episode was kind of born from, wasn't it? You know, when we look at data, we're not just talking about company data that exists in, you know, Word, Excel, traditional Office file formats. There's a whole host of other applications outside of that. So in a lot of cases, you know, if we take ourselves, you know, we consume various different types of cloud storage. Obviously, we use SharePoint Online, we use OneDrive. A lot of organizations do. And that's a really great use case for, I've got some data and I don't want to store it on my machine. I'm going to put it in the cloud. That's great. We can see that one-to-one. But what are the other types of cloud storage that people may not realize is there to be able to consume?
So there's kind of two things with this thing. One is that all cloud storage fundamentally is the same. So most, let's say most, not all, because the comments,
the vast majority of it,
the comments will come flooding in about the things that aren't the same as what I'm about to say. So most cloud storage is built around the idea of object storage, and object storage is a different way of storage. So it stores all data as objects. And the reason object storage tends to be the underlying architecture for most cloud storage is because object storage is designed to work at massive scale and over geographies. So the idea that you write data and then you can, say, massive scale is hugely important, and the ability to easily geographically spread that data. So if you think about how a cloud infrastructure at an AWS or an Azure or a GCP or an Oracle or whatever works, it's massive scale over huge geographies. And so object storage is a huge part of that. The problem with object storage for most of us is we don't have things that talk directly to object storage. Yeah. And this is where you get then the different types of cloud storage, because what you end up doing is, just to make them practically usable, is you end up putting things in front of object storage that allow you to use the object storage in ways that us mere mortals understand.
It presents it differently, doesn't it?
Yeah, you said presentation layer, really.
The way I view it is it's a presentation layer. The back end doesn't really matter. Yeah, it's the front end that we see as consumers, and it's interesting that you use that word consume. And I think that's absolutely right. You know, when we're using these services, we're consuming the services. We don't need to think about what the underlying storage is.
Absolutely.
Just does it meet my needs? And I think for me, you know, it comes down to a few key areas when we're looking at different types of storage. So we've got object storage. You touched on that. So we can put object into there if our application talks object storage. Yeah. So the likes of Veeam, for example, we can use Veeam that talks to an object storage to keep our data offsite, as in our backup data offsite, and that will satisfy maybe a insurance requirement that says you've got to keep some data offsite. Tick, we're good with that. But we can't put that data into SharePoint and Online because it's just not designed to put that type of data in there. So really, for me, it's the key areas. It comes down to features. What can we do with that? You know, you spoke about elasticity. Can we scale up? Can we shrink back? I think performance comes into that as well. You know, can we consume the storage as quickly as what the application needs? You know, it's pointless putting the application on slow storage if it's a high-speed transactional database, because the application just will not work. You know, if it's a high-speed transactional database, we need suitable cloud storage that reflects the requirements, isn't it? You know, we need it to be fast, we need it to be reliable, we need it to probably be backed up somewhere else onto there. And then it's around compatibility as well. What applications and how are we trying to integrate them in? So I think for me, a big area with cloud storage is offsite backup. You know, keeping your data offsite. I suppose the reason for that is when we look at enterprise storage, and I'm going to touch on enterprise storage here, but I'm not going to preclude small business from this as well. When we talk about enterprise storage, they tend to have, if you've got a server estate, quite expensive SSD drives that run the workloads. If you're then backing up your data, you want your data not sitting on that really expensive, fast spinning disk. You want it maybe on a lower cost, high capacity tier. And the way that you would architect that in a data center is with slower disks. You know, raw capacity is higher, performance is lower, but you're still powering them, you're still cooling them, you're still paying for the electricity costs and the floor space in the data center. Whereas we can just consume that, as you said, pump it off into, you know, Azure, AWS, wherever you want to put it, get that data offsite. You're still relatively low cost to do it, but by the time you take into account heating, cooling, data center costs, it's actually cheaper in a lot of cases to do it.
All these are great use cases, I think, you know, and I just go back quickly on something that you said, because it's almost a separate episode in itself. The thing about high performance and cloud storage is, so one of the things object storage isn't potentially is high performance.
High performance,
So what you have seen, and, you know, if we think about our friends over at NetApp, who we know well, so one of the things that NetApp did was that they've built a first-party service in the major cloud providers. So in Azure, it's called Azure NetApp Files. They've got an equivalent in AWS whose name escapes me. But what that is basically NetApp's own kit deployed in Microsoft data centers, which is high performance all flash. I don't know what the architecture looks like, but basically high performance all flash. And they have lots of customers who use that as the underlying architecture to big databases in the cloud, because they get that kind of guaranteed performance. You know, it comes with a cost, etc. But you know that's an option. But that's almost a different conversation. Those other use cases though that you're talking about are perfect examples of this. So you know, if you take a Veeam or basically any kind of enterprise quality backup provider, they're all making it relatively straightforward now to plug into what people tend to use this phrase S3, but S3 is kind of a standard protocol for talking to object storage. It's what Amazon kind of developed, I guess, in terms of the way you connect it to their storage. And now by default, most people will put an S3 protocol in their stack, which means that things like Veeam, Commvault, etc., can talk to these things and just becomes a cloud tier. So that's one use. I think another good use is archiving. So, you know, we've just been working on some things where people are looking at, as you were talking about, but actually even at a small level. But yes, that idea, I've got big high capacity flash. It's really expensive, relatively expensive, maybe not really expensive, but relatively expensive to spin in disk. I don't want all of my data that nobody's touched 20 days after they've created it and it's been there for 5 years. Don't consume flash. Can we put that somewhere cheaper? So, you know, you've got, again, technologies like NetApp have got a thing called Fabric Pool. Fabric Pool plugs into S3 compatible object storage at the back end and then just automatically archives data out into these storage tiers. That can be on-prem, but it can equally be any S3 compatible object storage that lives in the cloud. So that's a good use case. At a smaller level, though, we've just been working on something where people are looking at how do I use cloud but maintain some level of on-premises storage.
Yes, that's
so
right.
Actually, one of the things that we're seeing is this idea of kind of almost like a plug-in cache at one end. So the data repository is kind of cloud storage at the back end, but you can install this in a Windows server, this kind of plug-in front-end cache, and then that cache is where, so the users just see their, / file server 01 and port data in that.
I think that this is a really good project, actually, this one. I think, you've always got to be careful to select the right storage. And the customer's architected quite a well architected, server storage array. But their concerns is that because of the type of business that they are, they do, quite large engineering drawings. They need to keep that data for a long time. I think it's 7 or 8 years. And so once that data is written and the project closed off, let's say the project takes a year. So that's active data for a year because people are working on that project. But then for 7 years, it's sat on the same server with the same high performance disks.
Yeah.
Is that the best use of that storage? No, that data is not being accessed. So they're asking a question. The correct question, I think, is there a better place where I can put this that makes it easy to bring back should I need it to? And that's quite good because, I'm going to use the word again, consume. The customer's got maybe, 10 terabytes of high performance disk on site, but their data requirements are maybe 20 terabytes. Yeah. How do you make that data easy to access from an end user perspective, but make sure that from a cost and manageability perspective, it's sitting in the right place? We want it to be secure. We want it to be easy for users to manage. And we want it to essentially be bottomless storage. We want to be able to keep putting data in there. It could be 10 terabytes of live storage because that's the active file system and 100 terabytes of archived tier. It doesn't really matter the way that is being consumed. They're leveraging cloud storage in quite a good way there, because they're asking the right questions. Is there a better way I can do this? Is it going to give me the performance that I need? Can I maintain my security? Yes. That's the right path for them.
Well, I think another interesting use case that comes out of that, and this is something else worked on with somebody recently, is for companies with large geographic spread, particularly where they've got
multiple sites.
Potentially where they've got sites in places where they're difficult to reach or it's difficult for them to get support out to. So one of the things taking that kind of idea of Windows Server potentially acting just as almost like a local cache to this back-end storage repository was the idea that you can drop Windows servers in lots of locations and you build yourself this kind of global file system built on a central object store, a central cloud repository.
Centralized data location.
But from a user point of view, all they're seeing are kind of Windows servers dropping data into it. We talked before around the reason that object storage tends to underlie a lot of this is because what it's good at is lots of things put in over geographically spread distances. It's just architected to be able to do that. And that allows users to do things without the idea of, I've got to replicate data out to lots of sites with all the cost and complexity that comes with it. Is that actually what I'm dropping on each of these sites is kind of a file cache almost, and then just using that cache as this is your local version of it, all goes and lives in this central piece. We can manage the central piece. So, again, it's another interesting use case around data. And I suppose one, just to finish off in terms of cloud storage use cases and why not all storage in the cloud is SharePoint and OneDrive. I was talking to somebody a couple of months back, and they were talking about some of the stuff that they're doing with a cloud storage provider that we've done some work with. And what they're doing is they're using that cloud storage repository as a repository that they then apply their AI capabilities to. And what they do in this instance is lots of video analysis. And what it allows them to do is to use AI on this. I'm trying to do this story without giving away who this is, but lots of video analysis. They apply AI to that to then cut lots of versions of the content that they've got to then present out to different localities that have different rules about the way they can consume video content. And what that's allowed them to do is take a task that it's not even a task that would be really hard to do manually. It's a task they just couldn't do manually, but what they've been able to do is use this kind of big cloud repository. They can upload all of the data into it and then apply AI models to that same data set to allow them to do a thing and service their customers in a way that was just impossible for them to do before. So I'm always fascinated by cloud storage in this way, using this kind of, how do we use this to do innovative things? I think lots of things that we've talked about are a good use in terms of cost efficiency and potentially applying kind of global access to data in a way that that might have been difficult previously. But I think there's always an interesting use case in how you can use this kind of thing to do really smart stuff that is brand new and ways of servicing customers you couldn't do before. That's not SharePoint and OneDrive. That's using, big cloud repositories, applying intelligence to it and being able to use it. So I could do 3 hours on this. I think kind of cloud storage is a way more interesting topic than probably people realize.
It's a big topic, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a massive topic.
It's a very big topic.
We love a big topic.
Do you have a takeaway for this episode?
Cloud storage is dead interesting.
Cloud storage is dead interesting.
I think the thing you talked about before would probably be my takeaway. Look at it as you work at modernizing how you handle storage long term and how you handle this kind of growing capacity of storage. Consider cloud storage as an option, because there's lots of ways to easily integrate that into your day-to-day thing, whether it's backup, archive, geographic file sharing, or whether you're looking to do something new and innovative. I think lots of really good use cases, lots easier to consume. We can do a whole show on how you price cloud storage as well.
Absolutely, but I mean, for me, my takeaway for this episode would be to encourage the listener to carefully select the correct cloud storage for their requirements. You can kind of shoehorn certain elements of cloud storage to do certain things that they're not really designed to do. Whereas often we find that actually there tends to be something designed to do what it is that you need to do. So that's that. So great episode. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought it was a great episode.
Yeah, great episode. So if you are watching on YouTube and you've not yet subscribed, there is a subscribe button down here, I believe it is. Hit that. Make sure that you don't miss any future episodes. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, hit the subscribe button to have the new episodes dropped into your device every Tuesday morning. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you next week.